In today's fast-paced, hyper-connected world, it's easy to feel like your mind is stuck on a treadmill of endless thoughts. You replay conversations, worry about the future, and second-guess decisions, all while feeling like you're losing control of your own peace. Sound familiar? The truth is, overthinking isn't just exhausting, it's a heavy emotional burden that can leave you feeling stuck and disconnected. But what if I told you that the solution to this modern struggle has been around for thousands of years? Marcus Aurelius, one of history's greatest Stoic philosophers, once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's the essence of Stoicism, not trying to control the uncontrollable, but mastering your own thoughts and reactions. In this video, we're diving into 18 timeless Stoic practices designed to help you break free from overthinking and reclaim your inner peace. These aren't just ancient theories, they're practical tools you can use today to transform how you think and live. So, what if the key to peace doesn't lie in controlling the world, but in mastering your mind? Let's explore how Stoicism can guide you there. Stoicism teaches that peace begins with understanding what is within your power. At its core, this philosophy introduces the idea of the dichotomy of control, a simple yet profound concept that divides life into two categories: things we can influence and things we cannot. The ancient Stoic philosopher Epictetus put it best when he said, "Some things are up to us and some are not." This distinction is the foundation of Stoic thinking, and it's also the antidote to overthinking. When we waste energy trying to control what's outside our grasp, we create unnecessary stress and chaos in our minds. Think about it. How often do we find ourselves spiraling over things like other people's opinions, the weather, or even the past? These are all things we simply cannot change, no matter how much we obsess over them. For example, imagine you're constantly worried about what your coworkers think of you. You replay conversations in your head, overanalyze their reactions, and stress about how you're perceived. But here's the truth: their thoughts and judgments are entirely outside your control. What is within your power, however, is how you choose to respond, how you carry yourself, and how you focus on your own growth and values. So, the next time you catch yourself overthinking, pause and ask, is this something I can actually control? If the answer is no, it's time to redirect your energy. Instead of fixating on the uncontrollable, shift your focus to what you can do. Maybe it's preparing for a meeting, practicing kindness, or simply reminding yourself that your worth isn't determined by others' opinions. By doing this, you reclaim your peace and free yourself from the weight of overthinking. What's one thing you're overthinking right now that's actually beyond your control? Take a moment to reflect on that and consider how you might redirect your energy towards something more meaningful. This small shift in perspective can make all the difference in finding clarity and calm. What if imagining the worst could actually bring you peace? It sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? But for the Stoics, this practice, known as negative visualization, was a powerful tool for cultivating resilience and tranquility. Think of it as mental training. By envisioning potential challenges or losses, you prepare yourself emotionally and mentally, making it easier to face whatever life throws your way. Take Seneca, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers. When he was exiled to Corsica by the Emperor Claudius, he didn't crumble under despair. Instead, he leaned into the principles of premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. Seneca had already imagined losing his wealth, status, and even his freedom long before it happened. So when exile became his reality, he was able to meet it with a sense of calm and acceptance. He wrote, "What fortune has made yours is not your own," a reminder that external things are fleeting and beyond our control. Here's how you can apply this practice in your own life. Start by picking a situation that causes you anxiety. Maybe it's losing your job, a relationship ending, or even a health scare. Now, close your eyes and vividly imagine the worst-case scenario. Picture the details, how it feels, what you'd say, and how you'd respond. But don't stop there. Reflect on what you'd do next. How would you adapt? What resources or strengths could you draw on? This isn't about dwelling on negativity. It's about building confidence in your ability to handle adversity. By practicing negative visualization, you're not inviting disaster, you're disarming fear. When you've already walked through the worst in your mind, the unknown loses its power to paralyze you. So take a moment to reflect. How might preparing for the worst help you worry less about the future? Could this practice give you the courage to face life's uncertainties with a steadier heart? How often do you catch yourself trapped in thoughts about the past or future, completely missing what's happening right in front of you? It's a common struggle, and overthinking tends to pull us away from the present moment, leaving us feeling disconnected and overwhelmed. Stoicism, though, offers a powerful antidote to this. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers, once wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." His words remind us that the present is all we truly have, a fleeting, irreplaceable moment that deserves our full attention. The Stoics believed that dwelling on the past or worrying about the future only robs us of the opportunity to live fully. Overthinking, after all, is often a refusal to accept the present as it is. We get caught up in regrets, what-ifs, or hypothetical scenarios, and in doing so, we miss the beauty and potential of what's right here, right now. Imagine standing by a flowing river. If you're too busy thinking about where the water came from or where it's going, you'll never truly see the way it sparkles in the sunlight. The present moment is like that river, always moving, always alive, and always worth your attention. So, how can we practice this in our daily lives? Start small. One of the simplest yet most effective ways to anchor yourself in the present is to focus on your breath. Take a moment right now to notice the rhythm of your breathing, the cool air entering your nose, the gentle rise and fall of your chest. It's a grounding exercise that brings you back to the here and now. Or try tuning into your surroundings. What do you hear? What do you see? The Stoics called this attentiveness, and it's a skill that can help you break free from the grip of overthinking. Here's a challenge for you. What's one thing you can do today to bring yourself fully into the present? Maybe it's taking a walk without your phone, savoring the taste of your coffee, or simply sitting quietly for a few minutes. The key is to make it intentional, to choose presence over distraction, because when you embrace the present moment, you're not just living, you're truly alive. Gratitude is a Stoic superpower against overthinking. Think about it. When you focus on what you already have, it's like redirecting a spotlight away from your worries and onto the abundance that's already present in your life. The Stoics, like Seneca, believed deeply in this idea. He once wrote, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future, not to amuse ourselves with either hopes or fears, but to rest satisfied with what we have, which is sufficient." That's the essence of gratitude, recognizing that life's gifts, even the small ones, are more than enough to ground us in the present moment. But how does this work in practice? Start by carving out a few minutes each day to reflect on what you're thankful for. A simple practice like writing down 3 things you're grateful for in a journal can shift your mindset over time. It doesn't have to be grand. It could be as ordinary as a warm cup of coffee in the morning or the sound of birds outside your window. The act of noticing these details trains your mind to focus on what's good rather than what's missing or uncertain. Let's take a modern example. Imagine you're stuck in traffic, running late for an important meeting. Your mind might spiral into frustration and anxiety, replaying all the ways this could go wrong. But what if instead you paused and thought, "I'm grateful for this car that gets me where I need to go," I'm grateful for the opportunity to even have this meeting. That small shift in perspective can transform stress into calm, reminding you that even in challenging moments, there's something to appreciate. So, here's a question to reflect on. What's one thing you're grateful for that you often overlook? It could be something you take for granted, like your health, a supportive friend, or even the ability to learn and grow. Gratitude isn't about ignoring life's difficulties. It's about finding balance, anchoring yourself in what's good, and letting that foundation steady you when overthinking tries to pull you under. Everything you worry about is temporary. Think about that for a moment. The problems that feel overwhelming today, the anxieties that keep you up at night, they're all fleeting. This is the heart of the Stoic principle of impermanence, a concept Marcus Aurelius often reflected on. He wrote, "Everything is transitory, both what remembers and what is remembered." In other words, life is in a constant state of change, and clinging to what's already shifting is like trying to hold onto water. It slips through your fingers no matter how tightly you grip. Overthinking often arises from resisting this natural flow of life. We try to control outcomes, cling to what's familiar, or fight against change because it feels safer. But Stoicism teaches us that peace comes not from resisting impermanence, but from embracing it. When you accept that life is unpredictable and ever-changing, you stop wasting energy on what you can't control. Instead, you focus on how you respond to it. Here's a practical exercise to help you internalize this idea. Take a moment to reflect on past worries that once consumed you. Maybe it was a job you thought you couldn't live without, a relationship that felt like the end of the world when it ended, or a mistake you thought you'd never recover from. Now, looking back, how much of that still holds power over you? Chances are those worries have faded, replaced by new challenges and opportunities. That's the nature of impermanence. What feels insurmountable today will one day be a memory. So, what's one thing you're clinging to right now that you could let go of? Is it a fear of failure, a need for certainty, or a grudge you've been holding onto? By recognizing that these too are temporary, you begin to loosen their grip on your mind. You start to see that overthinking is often just a futile attempt to make the impermanent permanent. And when you stop fighting the inevitable, you find a deeper sense of peace. In a world of constant noise, overthinking thrives. Think about it. How often do you find yourself scrolling endlessly through social media, bombarded by notifications or glued to the latest news cycle? This relentless stream of information doesn't just distract us, it fuels the fire of overthinking, leaving our minds cluttered and restless. The Stoics, however, had a different approach. They understood that simplicity wasn't just a lifestyle choice, it was a path to inner peace. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "You must give yourself time to be alone with yourself." This isn't about isolation for its own sake, but about creating the mental space to reflect, to focus, and to truly understand what matters. In a world that constantly demands our attention, solitude becomes a radical act of self-preservation. It's about stepping back from the noise so you can hear your own thoughts clearly. So, how can we put this into practice? Start by identifying the sources of noise in your life. Maybe it's the endless scroll of social media or the habit of checking the news every hour. These inputs, while seemingly harmless, often add unnecessary weight to our minds. Try setting boundaries, perhaps limit social media to a specific time of day, or designate one day a week as a news-free day. The goal isn't to cut yourself off completely, but to create intentional pauses in the flow of information. Consider this: when you reduce the amount of external input, you're not losing anything, you're gaining clarity. Imagine a glass of muddy water. If you keep stirring it, the water stays cloudy. But if you let it sit, the sediment settles and the water becomes clear. Your mind works the same way. By limiting distractions, you allow your thoughts to settle, and suddenly, what once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. Now, here's a question to reflect on. What's one source of noise you could eliminate today? It doesn't have to be a drastic change. Even small adjustments can make a big difference. The key is to take that first step toward creating the mental space you need to think clearly and live intentionally. After all, peace of mind doesn't come from adding more to your life. It comes from knowing what to let go of. What if your struggles were actually gifts in disguise? It's a question that might feel counterintuitive at first, but it's at the heart of a powerful Stoic practice known as amor fati, loving one's fate. This isn't about blindly accepting hardship or pretending everything is fine. Instead, it's about recognizing that every challenge, no matter how difficult, carries the potential for growth and transformation. The Stoics believed that the obstacles we face aren't just roadblocks, they're opportunities to become stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Take Epictetus, for example. Born into slavery and facing unimaginable hardships, he didn't let his circumstances define him. Instead, he taught that our power lies not in what happens to us, but in how we respond. He famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This idea flips the script on adversity, encouraging us to see challenges not as something to avoid, but as something to embrace because they're the very things that shape us. Marcus Aurelius, too, embodied this principle. As a Roman emperor, he faced constant political turmoil, war, and personal loss. Yet, in his writings, he repeatedly reminded himself to view these struggles as opportunities to practice virtue. He didn't see his hardships as punishments, he saw them as tests of character. In one of his meditations, he wrote, "The obstacle is the way." For Marcus, every challenge was a chance to refine his patience, courage, and wisdom. So, how can you apply this in your own life? Start by reframing your current struggles. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" try asking, "What is this teaching me?" Maybe that stressful job is helping you develop resilience. Maybe that difficult relationship is teaching you patience or boundaries. Even small, everyday frustrations, like traffic or delays, can become opportunities to practice calmness and presence. Think about it. How could your current struggle be shaping you for the better? What strengths or skills might it be helping you build? When we shift our perspective, we stop seeing challenges as enemies and start seeing them as allies in our journey toward becoming the best version of ourselves. This isn't about denying the difficulty of life. It's about choosing to find meaning and growth within it. And that's the essence of amor fati, not just enduring your fate, but loving it because it's through these challenges that we truly grow. Overthinking often stems from our tendency to cling tightly to specific results. We get so caught up in how things should turn out that we forget to focus on what we can actually control. This is where Stoic philosophy offers a powerful antidote, the practice of detachment from outcomes. The Stoics taught that while we can influence our actions and efforts, the final result is often beyond our control. And when we fixate on outcomes, we set ourselves up for unnecessary stress and disappointment. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic thinkers, put it this way: "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." In other words, do your best, give your full effort, and then let go of the outcome. This doesn't mean you stop caring or trying. It means you shift your focus to what truly matters, the quality of your actions, not the uncontrollable results. Let's take a modern example. Imagine you're preparing for a job interview. You can research the company, practice your answers, and dress professionally, all of which are within your control. But whether you get the job, that's not entirely up to you. The decision depends on factors like the hiring manager's preferences, the competition, or even timing. If you obsess over the outcome, you'll likely feel anxious and overwhelmed. But if you focus on doing your best in the preparation and the interview itself, you'll approach the situation with confidence and peace regardless of the result. This principle applies to so many areas of life: relationships, creative projects, even personal goals. The key is to ask yourself, what's truly within my control? And what am I trying to hold onto that I can't fully influence? When you identify those things, you can redirect your energy toward what you can do, rather than wasting it on what you can't. Here's a question to reflect on. What's one outcome in your life right now that you could release your attachment to? It might be a promotion you're hoping for, a project you're nervous about, or even a personal expectation you've placed on yourself. Whatever it is, consider how focusing on your effort rather than the result could bring you a little more peace and a lot less overthinking. How well do you truly know your own mind? It's a question that might stop you in your tracks, but it's one the Stoics asked themselves constantly. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most famous Stoic philosophers, spent years reflecting on his thoughts and emotions in his personal writings, now known as meditations. He didn't just think about what was happening around him, he turned inward, examining his reactions, his fears, and his desires. This practice of self-awareness wasn't just about understanding himself, it was about freeing himself from the chaos of unexamined thoughts and emotions. Overthinking often starts here, in the tangled web of feelings and ideas we don't take the time to untangle. So, how do we begin to untangle them? One of the most powerful tools the Stoics used, and one that's just as relevant today, is journaling. Writing down your thoughts isn't just about recording what happened in your day. It's about shining a light on the patterns that shape your mind. When you put pen to paper, you create a space to observe your thoughts without judgment. You might notice, for example, that certain situations consistently trigger anxiety or frustration. Maybe it's a particular conversation, a looming deadline, or even a specific person. By identifying these triggers, you gain clarity. You start to see that your overthinking isn't random, it's tied to something deeper, something you can address. Let's take an example. Imagine someone who feels a knot of anxiety every time they check their email. At first, it might seem like the emails themselves are the problem. But through self-reflection, they might realize it's not the emails causing the stress, it's the fear of missing something important or making a mistake. Once they understand this, they can take steps to address the root cause, whether that's setting boundaries around email time or reminding themselves that perfection isn't the goal. The overthinking loses its grip because the trigger has been identified and examined. Now, think about your own life. What's one thought pattern you've noticed that fuels your overthinking? Is it a tendency to catastrophize, imagining the worst-case scenario? Or maybe it's a habit of replaying past conversations, wondering what you could have said differently. Whatever it is, the first step to breaking free is simply noticing it. Self-awareness doesn't magically erase overthinking, but it gives you the power to step back and say, this is where it starts. And I can choose to respond differently. The Stoics believed that the unexamined life is not worth living, and when it comes to overthinking, that couldn't be more true. By developing self-awareness, you're not just observing your mind, you're reclaiming it, and that's where true peace begins. Discomfort is a Stoic teacher. It's not something to avoid, but rather something to lean into. The Stoics believed that voluntarily experiencing discomfort was a way to train the mind, build resilience, and ultimately free ourselves from the grip of overthinking. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, often wrote about the value of enduring small hardships. He saw it as a way to remind ourselves that we're capable of handling far more than we think. When we willingly step into discomfort, we strip away the fear of the unknown. We prove to ourselves that we can adapt, endure, and even thrive in conditions that might initially feel challenging. So how does this work in practice? Start small. Take a cold shower instead of a warm one. Skip a meal and fast for a day. Walk instead of drive, even if it's inconvenient. These aren't acts of punishment, they're acts of empowerment. Each time you choose discomfort, you're training your mind to focus on what's within your control, rather than worrying about what's not. Overthinking often stems from a fear of uncertainty or a desire to avoid pain. But when you voluntarily face discomfort, you realize that you can handle it. And that realization is incredibly freeing. Think about how this applies to modern life. Imagine you're someone who dreads public speaking. Instead of avoiding it, you decide to sign up for a workshop or give a small presentation at work. The discomfort is real, but so is the growth. By facing that fear head-on, you not only build confidence but also reduce the mental energy you'd otherwise spend overthinking every possible outcome. Discomfort, in this case, becomes a tool for clarity and courage. So, here's a question to consider. What's one small discomfort you could embrace to strengthen your mind? It doesn't have to be dramatic or life-altering. Even something as simple as turning off your phone for an hour or waking up earlier than usual can be a step toward building mental toughness. The key is to approach it with intention, knowing that each small act of voluntary discomfort is a step toward greater peace and resilience. Perfectionism is a breeding ground for overthinking. It's that voice in your head that tells you nothing is ever good enough, that you must polish every detail until it shines, and that any mistake is a failure. But here's the truth: perfectionism doesn't lead to excellence, it leads to exhaustion. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus once said, "If you wish to improve, be content to appear clueless or stupid in extraneous matters." In other words, focus on progress, not perfection. Letting go of the need to be flawless isn't about giving up, it's about freeing yourself to grow. Take Marcus Aurelius, for example. As a Roman emperor, he had every reason to demand perfection from himself and others. Yet he often reflected on his own limitations and mistakes in his personal writings. He didn't see these flaws as failures, but as opportunities to learn and improve. This mindset allowed him to lead with humility and resilience, even in the face of immense pressure. So, how can we apply this wisdom to our own lives? Start by setting realistic goals. Instead of aiming for perfection, aim for progress. Break tasks into smaller, manageable steps and celebrate each small win along the way. Remind yourself that mistakes aren't the end of the road, they're part of the journey. Here's a question to reflect on. What's one area of your life where you could ease up on perfectionism? Maybe it's at work, where you feel the need to triple-check every email. Or perhaps it's in your relationships, where you worry about saying the wrong thing. Whatever it is, consider how letting go of perfection might open up space for growth and peace. Progress, not perfection. That's where true strength lies. How often do you find yourself making decisions out of fear, or because your mind is racing with endless possibilities? It's easy to let overthinking take the wheel, but Stoicism offers a powerful antidote: mindful decision-making. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, often reminded himself to act with clarity and reason, not emotion. He wrote in his personal journal, which we now know as Meditations, that our choices should come from a place of calm reflection, not frantic haste. When we slow down and pause before acting, we give ourselves the space to see the situation clearly. This simple act of reflection can cut through the noise of anxiety and help us make choices aligned with our values, not our fears. Think about it. When you rush into decisions, how often do you regret them later? The Stoics believed that by practicing mindfulness in our decision-making, we not only reduce stress but also cultivate a deeper sense of peace and control over our lives. Here's a practical exercise to try. The next time you're faced with a decision, big or small, take a moment to pause, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, what would a calm, rational version of me do here? This small act of mindfulness can shift your perspective and help you respond rather than react. For example, imagine you're at work and a colleague sends you a message that feels critical or confrontational. Your first instinct might be to fire back a defensive reply, but if you pause, breathe, and reflect, you might realize that their tone has more to do with their own stress than anything you've done. Responding with patience and understanding not only diffuses tension but also leaves you feeling more at peace. So, what's one decision in your life right now that you could approach with more mindfulness? Whether it's a conversation you've been avoiding or a choice you've been overanalyzing, take a step back, breathe, and let clarity guide you. You might be surprised at how much lighter and more in control you feel. Stoicism teaches that true peace comes from living virtuously. This might sound simple, but it's a profound shift in how we approach life. Instead of tying our happiness to outcomes, like getting that promotion, winning an argument, or achieving a particular goal, we focus on what's within our control, our character, our actions, and our integrity. When we prioritize virtue over results, we free ourselves from the endless cycle of overthinking. Why? Because we're no longer obsessing over how things will turn out. We're focused on doing what's right, regardless of the outcome. Seneca once said, "Virtue is nothing else than right reason." What he meant is that living virtuously means aligning our choices with wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline. These aren't just lofty ideals, they're practical tools for navigating life's challenges. When we act with virtue, we're less likely to second-guess ourselves or get caught up in regret. We can trust that we've done our best even if things don't go as planned. Take the example of Cato the Younger, a Stoic who lived during the Roman Republic. When faced with the choice of compromising his principles to gain power or standing firm in his values, he chose virtue, even though it ultimately cost him his life. His story reminds us that integrity isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. It's a choice that brings inner peace even in the face of adversity. So how can we apply this in our own lives? Start by reflecting on your core values. What matters most to you? Is it honesty, compassion, or perseverance? Once you've identified those values, ask yourself, what's one way I could prioritize virtue in my daily life? Maybe it's speaking up for someone who can't advocate for themselves or staying committed to a goal even when it gets tough. When we focus on virtue, we shift our energy from worrying about what we can't control to taking pride in how we show up in the world, and that's where real peace begins. How would your life change if you met every situation with calm? It's a question worth sitting with for a moment. Imagine a world where your emotions didn't spiral out of control every time something unexpected happened, where challenges felt more like opportunities to grow rather than threats to your peace. This is the essence of equanimity, a cornerstone of Stoic philosophy and a powerful tool for letting go of overthinking. The Stoics, like Epictetus, taught that our peace of mind doesn't depend on external events but on how we choose to respond to them. He famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." When we practice equanimity, we're not ignoring our emotions or pretending life is perfect. Instead, we're choosing to meet every situation with a sense of balance and composure. This mindset shift can dramatically reduce overthinking because it removes the emotional charge that often fuels our mental spirals. Think about it, overthinking often stems from a place of anxiety or fear. We ruminate on what might go wrong, replay past mistakes, or try to control outcomes we can't predict. But when we approach life with equanimity, we accept that some things are beyond our control, and we focus instead on how we can respond with clarity and purpose. This doesn't mean we become passive or indifferent. It means we act from a place of calm rather than chaos. So, how can you start practicing equanimity in your own life? One simple yet powerful step is to pause before reacting. When something triggers you, whether it's a stressful email, a difficult conversation, or a sudden change of plans, take a deep breath. Give yourself a moment to step back and observe the situation without immediately attaching to it emotionally. This small pause can create the space you need to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Here's an example to bring this to life. Imagine you're stuck in traffic, running late for an important meeting. Your first instinct might be frustration, maybe even panic, as you start overthinking the consequences of being late. But what if, instead of spiraling, you took a moment to remind yourself that the traffic is out of your control? You might still feel the initial stress, but by choosing equanimity, you can shift your focus to what you can control, like calling ahead to let someone know you'll be late or using the time to mentally prepare for the meeting. This simple act of calm can transform a stressful situation into something manageable, even productive. Now, here's a question for you to reflect on. What's one situation in your life where you could practice greater equanimity? It could be something as small as dealing with a rude comment or as significant as navigating a big life decision. Whatever it is, consider how approaching it with calm and balance might change the outcome, and how it might quiet the noise of overthinking in your mind. Comparison is the thief of peace. How often do we find ourselves caught in the trap of measuring our lives against someone else's? This simple yet profound observation captures why so many of us struggle with overthinking. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers, once wrote, "Do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about your neighbors, unless with a view to some mutual benefit." In other words, your energy is finite, and spending it on comparing yourself to others is a surefire way to lose sight of your own journey. Overthinking often begins when we fixate on what others are doing, achieving, or seeming to have. We wonder why we aren't as successful, as happy, or as accomplished as someone else. But here's the thing, that comparison is an illusion. Social media, for example, often shows us a curated highlight reel of other people's lives, not the full picture. It's easy to forget that everyone has struggles, doubts, and challenges, even if they don't post about them. So, how do we break free from this cycle? Start by limiting your exposure to triggers. If scrolling through social media leaves you feeling inadequate, take a step back. Set boundaries, like checking it only once a day or unfollowing accounts that make you feel less than. Instead, redirect that time and energy inward. Focus on your goals, your progress, and your values. When you stop comparing, you create space for clarity and peace. Think about it. What's one comparison you could let go of today? Maybe it's the friend who seems to have the perfect career, or the neighbor with the picture-perfect family. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring about growth. It means you stop letting someone else's life dictate your worth. When you focus on your own path, you'll find that overthinking begins to fade, replaced by a quiet confidence in who you are and where you're headed. Forgiveness is a Stoic act of self-liberation. Think about that for a moment. When we hold onto resentment, anger, or grudges, we're not punishing the person who wronged us, we're punishing ourselves. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, wrote extensively about the corrosive nature of anger. He called it a form of temporary madness, a fire that consumes us from within. And when we let that fire burn, it doesn't just hurt our emotions, it fuels overthinking, trapping us in a cycle of rumination and mental chaos. The Stoics believed that forgiveness isn't about excusing someone's behavior or pretending it didn't hurt. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of carrying that pain. When you forgive, you take back control of your mind. You stop letting someone else's actions dictate your inner peace. And that's where the real power lies. So how do you start? One practical step is to write a forgiveness letter. You don't even have to send it. This is for you, not them. Write down what happened, how it made you feel, and then consciously choose to let it go. Acknowledge the hurt, but also acknowledge that holding onto it only keeps you stuck. This simple act can be incredibly freeing, like setting down a heavy bag you've been carrying for too long. Here's an example. Imagine someone betrayed your trust. Maybe it was a friend, a colleague, or even a family member. You've been replaying the situation in your mind over and over, wondering what you could have done differently or how you'll ever move past it. But when you decide to forgive, something shifts. You're no longer chained to that moment. You reclaim your peace, your clarity, and your ability to focus on what truly matters. Forgiveness isn't easy, but it's worth it. It's a gift you give yourself, a way to lighten your mental load and create space for growth. So here's a question to reflect on. Who's one person you could forgive today to lighten your mind? Take a moment to think about it. What would it feel like to release that weight and step forward with a clearer, freer mindset? How much of your overthinking stems from unnecessary complexity? It's a question worth asking, especially in a world that often equates busyness with importance. The Stoics, like Epictetus, understood this well. He once said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." At its core, this idea is about embracing simplicity, not just in what we own, but in how we think and live. When we strip away the excess, we create space for clarity and peace. Think about it. How often do you feel overwhelmed because your schedule is packed, your environment is cluttered, or your mind is racing with too many what-ifs? Overthinking thrives in chaos, but simplicity cuts through it. By focusing on what truly matters, we reduce the mental noise that fuels anxiety. So, where do you start? One practical step is to declutter your physical space. A clean, organized environment can have a surprisingly calming effect on your mind. Another is to simplify your schedule. Say no to commitments that drain your energy and yes to activities that align with your values. And don't forget to simplify your thoughts. Instead of dwelling on every possible outcome, focus on what's within your control. Take a moment to reflect. What's one area of your life you could simplify today? Maybe it's clearing out a drawer, setting boundaries with your time, or letting go of a habit that no longer serves you. Small changes can lead to big shifts in how you think and feel. Simplicity isn't about deprivation, it's about creating room for what truly matters, so you can live with greater ease and intention. How often do we let the small, fleeting worries of life consume us? The Stoics believed that remembering our mortality, what they called Memento Mori, can be one of the most liberating practices for finding peace. It might sound counterintuitive, but reflecting on the inevitability of death can actually help us live more fully. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most famous Stoics, often wrote about the brevity of life in his personal meditations. He would remind himself that life is fleeting, like a candle flame that flickers and fades. By doing so, he found clarity and focus, realizing that many of the things we stress over are trivial in the grand scheme of things. When we pause to consider how short life truly is, it puts our worries into perspective. That argument you had with a friend, the mistake you made at work, or the fear of what others think, these things suddenly seem smaller, less significant. The Stoics didn't see Memento Mori as a morbid exercise, but as a way to prioritize what truly matters. It's a reminder to stop wasting time on overthinking and instead direct our energy toward living with purpose and gratitude. Here's a simple practice to try. Write a letter to your future self. Imagine it's the last day of your life and you're reflecting on what you've accomplished, what you've learned, and how you've lived. What would you say? What regrets might you have? What would you wish you'd done differently? This exercise isn't meant to make you feel guilty or anxious. It's designed to help you see what's truly important. When you write this letter, you might find that the things you're overthinking right now don't even make the list. For example, someone who tried this exercise realized they were spending too much time worrying about their career and not enough time nurturing their relationships. By reflecting on their mortality, they shifted their focus to what truly mattered: family, love, and connection. Overthinking about promotions or deadlines faded into the background because they realized those things wouldn't define their legacy. So here's a question to leave you with. What would you do differently if you truly embraced life's impermanence? What changes would you make today if you knew your time was limited? Sometimes the best way to stop overthinking is to remember that life is short, and that's exactly what makes it so precious. As we bring this journey through the 18 Stoic practices to a close, it's worth taking a moment to reflect on the collective power of these timeless principles. Each practice, whether it's focusing on what's within your control, embracing discomfort, or practicing gratitude, works together to form a toolkit for releasing overthinking and cultivating a deeper sense of peace. Stoicism isn't just a philosophy of the past, it's a practical guide for navigating the complexities of modern life. It reminds us that while we can't control the chaos of the world, we can always control how we respond to it. Seneca once wrote, "The mind that is anxious about the future is miserable, but when your thoughts are well-ordered, tranquility follows." This is the heart of Stoicism, a well-ordered mind. It's not about suppressing emotions or pretending life is perfect. It's about training yourself to approach challenges with clarity, resilience, and a sense of calm. Now, here's where the real work begins. Instead of trying to master all 18 practices at once, start small. Choose one that resonates with you. Maybe it's journaling your thoughts at the end of the day, or practicing daily reflection on what you're grateful for. Commit to it, even if it's just for a week, and take note of how it shifts your mindset. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a question to reflect on. What's one area of your life where overthinking holds you back? How might applying even one of these Stoic practices help you reclaim your peace? If this video resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What practice are you excited to try? And if you're eager to dive deeper into Stoic wisdom, hit that subscribe button and join us on this journey. Together, we can build lives rooted in clarity, purpose, and tranquility. Remember, peace isn't something you find, it's something you create, one small, intentional step at a time. Let's take that step